Treasurer Turtle, members of the Cabinet, Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, Aurora Mayor Mike Coffin, Colorado Springs.
Right.
Recording in progress.
Welcome, everyone. It is Louisville City Council meeting Tuesday, July 16th, 2024. And can we get a roll call?
Mayor Pro Tem Dickinson, Councilmember Fahey,
Here.
Councilmember Lay,
Here.
Councilmember Bierman,
Here.
Councilmember Hefner,
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Here.
Councilmember Kern.
Here.
Very good. So I don't take offense. Been called worse. Let's say Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. Now is the time that we have public comments on items not on the agenda and on items on the consent agenda. The comments are limited to 3 minutes a person, or if you can find somebody who wants to pool their time with yours, you can have up to 6. You don't have to speak for the entire time. And we ask people who are not speaking not to cheer or clap or whatnot, because it tends to discourage people who might want to speak from doing so, and we want the widest participation we can get. Do we have anybody? We don't. Okay. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Council informational comments on pertinent items not on the agenda. Do we have any of those? All quiet on the dais. I have one. The staff, and it's sort of too numerous to mention, put on a wonderful unveiling of the resilience sculpture out in the front of City Hall. If you haven't seen that and spent some time with it, I encourage you to. There are, as I understand it, about 4,000 tiles that have been placed on there. It's hard to believe, but if you look really closely, you probably will see that there probably are 4,000 slides in there, or tiles. There are tiles that have some words on it that describe our community and the resilience within the community, and those are kind of fascinating to see what different people say, and I think they're from all age groups, and it's wonderful. One of the most used words down there, and I mentioned this in my comments last week, or wanted to, and I think I forgot actually, was kindness. And I thought that was, I tended to focus on grit and determination, but that is by no means everybody's understanding of resilience, and thankfully so. So anyway, thank you to staff and the artists and to all the people who came out. There were probably 50 people there. It was a pretty terrific little community event. All right, city manager's report. Acting city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. One item, I want to remind everyone of the Senior Services Annual Ice Cream Social, Thursday, July 18th at 6 p.m. at Community Park.
Excellent. It's always a fun event. All right, let's go on to regular business. We have a number of first readings tonight, so we'll try to work through those. Ordinance number 1878, Series 2024. An ordinance exempting construction materials from the city's use tax for building permits issued for repair and reconstruction of fences, walls, and accessory structures that sustain fire, smoke, heat, water, ash, or other damage as a result of the Marshall Fire. And that's on for first reading. Do I have a motion to set the public hearing for August 8th, 2024?
So moved. Second.
Mayor, that's August 6th.
Excuse me, August 6th. I stand corrected. Can we get a,
August 6, 2024. So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next is an ordinance number 1879, Series 2024, an ordinance approving the vacation of an existing drainage easement on lots 3 and 4, Block 1 of the Enclave replat. First reading set public hearing August 6th, 2024.
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Right. Next is ordinance number 1880, Series 2024, an ordinance repealing Section 13.12.105 to eliminate a water use rebate program. First reading to set a public hearing also on August 6, 2024. Do you have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Next is a resolution number 30, Series 2024, resolution approving preservation and restoration grant for the Kalachi House at 1209 Main Street. Opening the public hearing. And is there a staff presentation? There is. Please take it away.
Thank you very much, Mayor and council members. So this is a preservation and restoration grant request for a landmark property at 1209 Main Street, the Kalachi House. So this was landmarked in 2023, and at that, well, I can't see my notes, but I can read the screen. So, so it was landmarked in 2023 after it was placed on a demolition stay, and then it was subsequently subdivided, landmarked, and now this next year they're coming back to you all for consideration of a grant. So as per usual, staff went through and made sure that all of the requested items were identified in the historic structure assessment and that they related to either preservation, restoration, or rehabilitation. And in this case, all of them do for both. The total grant request is $40,000, which is the maximum for these types of requests. The total project cost is a little under $100,000, so you can see that this doesn't totally match half, but it maxes out the standard request. And just to note as well that Historic Preservation Commission recommended approval of this grant earlier this year. And so staff is recommending approval of Resolution 30, Series 2024, which would approve this grant request of up to $40,000 for the work identified in the Exhibit A. And the applicant is not present tonight. He asked to send his regards, but his wife just had a baby, so that's why he's not here. But I'll try to answer any questions if you have them.
That answers the question about applicant presentation. Do we have any questions from council of staff about this particular application? Okay. Seeing none, take our round of public comments. Do we have any public comments on this application? I don't see any online or otherwise. From council, why don't we come back and discuss this particular application? Are there comments from council about, yes, council?
Thank you. I actually just wanted to say thank you to staff. Actually, if resident was here, I would also thank them. I love seeing yet one more really cool historical house with a big name like the Kalachi name to be historical and put together, and I appreciate the effort, especially with how busy everything is right now, to get this brought to us. Thank you.
Other comments? Yeah, I appreciate the applicants putting in for this. This is a really important house from a storied Louisville family. And, you know, I think folks who look at the staff packet, it's always useful, I think, to see not just how much is being spent, but kind of the current state of the property, because there are a lot of problems with this that they're going to rectify with the grant. So I'm pleased that that's going to happen. And it's also nice to see this happen on Main Street, because that is very important to us. So any other comments? Comments? All right. I'm going to close the public hearing. Is there a motion on resolution number 30?
I move to approve Resolution Number 30, Series 2024, a resolution approving a preservation and restoration grant for the Kalachi House at 1209 Main Street.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Kern?
Yes.
Mayor Lay?
Yes.
Councilmember Fahey?
Yes.
Councilmember Hefner?
Yes.
Councilmember Bierman?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. I presume you'll let the applicant know and give the applicant our good thanks for doing this. Our next item is the community survey presentation of results. And do we have a staff presentation on this?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to invite Brandon Barnett from Polco, who administered our survey, to present the survey results.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. Perfect. Well, thank you very much for having me. I am happy to be here to present a summary of the findings from the Louisville National Community Survey. Before I begin, on behalf of myself and my Polco co-workers, I'd like to thank Grace Johnson, Derek Cosson, and Sam F. Fox, all three of whom were vital to the survey development and implementation process. They provided thoughtful and detailed feedback throughout the project. A little background on Polco and NRC. Polco's online community engagement polling platform provides the information tools local governments and other public sector leaders need. Now, hundreds of organizations nationwide use Polco for strategic planning, budgeting, and empowering resident voices. We make civil, verified community engagement online not only possible, but accessible. The National Research Center at Polco gives local governments and other public sector organizations the data they need to make more informed decisions. Since 1994, we've worked with hundreds of jurisdictions nationwide. NRC is best known for our national benchmarking surveys, such as the National Community Survey, the National Employee Survey, and the Community Assessment Survey for older adults, among others. Our benchmark database is the largest of its kind in the United States. Polco and NRC merged in 2019 to more effectively serve local government and project resident voices. Polco is exclusive partners with the International City County Managers Association and the National League of Cities. We also work closely with engaged local government leaders, the Alliance for Innovation, and many academic partners, including the American Association for Public Opinion Research, University of Wisconsin in Madison, the Hoover Institute at Stanford University, and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government.
Can I interrupt you for just a second? Can you pull that mic just up a little bit? It's just a little bit hard to hear you. Thanks.
Is that better? Okay. This was Louisville's 9th time conducting a community survey since 1990, 6th time with Polco and NRC. All households within Louisville were eligible to participate in the survey. A list of all households within the zip code serving Louisville was purchased based on updated listings from the United States Postal Service. Using GIS boundary files provided by the city, addresses located outside of Louisville's boundaries were removed from the list of potential households to survey. From the list of eligible households, 3,500 addresses were randomly selected to receive the survey. The 3,500 randomly selected households received mailings beginning on April 22nd, 2024, and the survey remained open for 7 weeks. This first mailing was a postcard inviting the household to participate in the survey. The next mailing contained a cover letter with instructions, the 5-page survey questionnaire, and a postage paid return envelope. Both the postcard and cover letter included a web link to give residents the opportunity to respond to the survey online. All follow-up mailings asked those who had not yet completed the survey to do so, and those who had already done so to not respond twice. A total of 570 completed surveys were received from these efforts, providing a response rate of 17% and a margin of error plus or minus 4 percentage points. We then compared the demographic profile of survey respondents to that of adults in Louisville using the most recent census and American Community Survey data and weighted the survey results. Weighting is a survey research best practice and helps to improve the representativeness of your survey results. In addition to the randomly selected probability sample of households, a link to an online community-wide open participation survey was publicized by Louisville. The open participation survey was open to all city residents and became available on May 20th, 2024. Survey remained open for 3 weeks and 247 responses were received. This presentation and the report are based on the 570 responses from the random sample mail-based survey. The responses to the open participation survey are provided separately in the full report. We'll now move into an overview of the results. There's a lot of additional data in the full report that we won't cover today, but today's presentation will focus on a few areas that we found to be most noteworthy within Louisville's survey results. The first of our key findings was that Louisville residents continue to enjoy a high quality of life. Louisville residents continue to rate the quality of life highly, with 92% awarding excellent or good marks in 2024. Regarding other aspects that contribute to a high quality of life, about 9 in 10 participants gave high marks to Louisville as a place to live and as a place to raise children. At least 7 in 10 respondents rated the community as a place to retire and to work as excellent or good, the latter of which experienced notable declines in scores from 2020 to 2024. Notably, the ratings for Louisville as a place to raise children and the overall quality of life brought the city above other comparison communities. The next of our key findings was that the Louisville Public Library and Historical Museum are almost universally appreciated. Of those who had an opinion, virtually all Louisville residents gave favorable ratings to all survey items relating to the Louisville Public Library and Historical Museum. All of these ratings remained stable from 2020 to 2024. Due to the specificity of these survey items, most are not benchmarkable, but the overall performance of the public library did exceed the national benchmarks. Our next key finding is that the community's recreation and senior center is highly valued. Almost all residents were pleased with various aspects of and services provided by the Louisville Recreation and Senior Center. Approximately 9 in 10 respondents awarded excellent or good ratings to the overall performance of, the overall quality of, and the overall customer service at the Louisville Recreation Center. Overall quality of and overall customer service at the Louisville Senior Center, current recreation programs for youth, and current programs and services for seniors. Coal Creek Golf Course also earned high marks, with at least 8 in 10 responses being positive for the overall quality of, the performance of, and the customer service at the golf course. 3/4 of respondents provided positive scores for the Recreation Center fees in Louisville. 5 survey items related to the recreation experienced declines in scores from 2020. The overall quality of the Louisville Senior Center, the current programs and services for senior, the overall performance of the Coal Creek Golf Course, the overall customer service at the Coal Creek Golf Course, which includes the knowledgeable, available, responsive, and courteous, and the Recreation Center fees in Louisville. It is important to note that downward trends have been seen across the board on questions related to recreation. Since COVID, a number of survey items have experienced slow declines across the board as people are increasingly sensitive to issues affecting their communities. This is less of a concern as something to keep an eye on in the future as future trend data to see if the ratings stabilize or continue to decline. These scores are still incredibly positive and should be something to take pride in. move into some additional special topics. This year, Louisville added a new question seeking input on aspects of the city's sense of community. More than 80% of residents agreed that Louisville is excellent or good at making all residents feel welcome, higher than the national average. Nearly 3/4 of respondents believed that the community valued residents of diverse backgrounds, and about 6 in 10 said the same for taking care of vulnerable residents, which fell on par with comparison communities. Just fewer than half of residents positively rated the city at attracting people from diverse backgrounds, which was below the national benchmark. When asked their interest in turning vacant storefronts and empty parking lots into mixed-use development, residents were somewhat split. 40% were in support, while 60% were opposed, with 30% strongly supporting and 32% strongly opposing. Residents were also asked their support for various approaches to developing affordable housing in the area. About 1/4 of respondents stated they most supported financial incentives for developers, and about 10% supported increased building height limitations and reduced parking requirements. 1/4 of participants also answered both none of the above and all of the above. Residents were asked how much of a priority the city should place on specific aspects of the community. All options received majority of support. Utilities and economic prosperity received the most selections for high priority, followed closely by open space and trails and public safety. Museum services came in at the bottom, but still maintained majority of support. Respondents were then asked to select their top 3 priorities from the list of 11 community aspects. Of all of the potential aspects for the city of Louisville to focus on, about half of residents selected economic prosperity as one of their top 3 priorities, which was similar to 2020, where it was also a top choice. About 4 in 10 chose open space and trails and public safety. Other items were selected as a top choice by fewer than 1/3 of respondents. When looking at the comparisons between the ratings for high priority and top 3 priority, economic prosperity, utilities, and public safety is merged as a top 3 based on the natural hierarchy in the ratings. Additionally, museum services, administration, and support services, and the library is merged as lowest combined priorities based on the relationship between the high priority ratings and the top 3 choices. Next, residents were asked how much of a priority the city should place on specific aspects related to a vibrant economic climate. While all options received majority support, the pursuit of redevelopment of vacant or underused commercial sites received the most selections for high priority, followed closely by meeting the retail and services needs of residents and attracting businesses to Louisville. Residents also then selected their top 2 priorities for the city to focus on in the next 4 years, using the same list of 7 aspects of vibrant economic climate. Of all the potential aspects for the city of Louisville to focus on, about half selected meeting the retail and services needs of local residents and attracting businesses to locate or expand in Louisville among their top 2 priorities for the city to focus on in the next 4 years. A similar proportion named pursuing redevelopment of vacant or underused commercial sites as one of their top 2 priorities. The remaining 4 received top 2 selections by 1/4 or less of residents. When analyzing the comparison between those items given a high priority rating and a top 2 choice, meeting the retail need and services needs of local residents and attracting businesses to locate or expand in Louisville, and pursuing redevelopment of vacant or underused commercial sites emerged as the top 3 priorities. Attracting visitors to shop in Louisville and creating and enhancing unique identities for each of Louisville's business districts were shown to be the lowest priorities in the natural hierarchy. As in past years, survey respondents were asked how frequently they used a variety of sources to gain information about the city of Louisville. About 9 in 10 reported that they used the quarterly community update newsletter, and a similar proportion relied on word of mouth and the city's website. Roughly 7 in 10 relied on communications from the utility bill inserts and the monthly community update e-newsletter. About 2/3 utilized the daily camera or the city's email notices. Half of respondents used social media as a source of city information, and about 1/4 reported attending, watching, or streaming a city council meeting. 16% had used the city's online engagement site, and 10% watched Channel 8. When comparisons to previous years were possible, residents were more likely in 2024 than in 2020 to have used the city email notices, have attended, watched, or streamed a city council meeting, or used the city's engagement website. Survey participants were less likely to have read the Daily Camera. In this iteration of the survey, we asked residents to indicate the level of impact they experienced from the Marshall Fire. During analysis, we examined the differences in the way those who experienced direct or indirect impacts with those who were not impacted to better understand the continuing challenges and needs of those affected by the tragedy. A full comparison of responses to each survey item from those affected by the Marshall Fire can be found in the full report in Appendix D. But here are some statistically significant differences that stood out to us as researchers. In each case here, those affected by the fire directly or indirectly have lower opinions related to governance and the planning and building department than those who were not affected by the fire. These ratings are similar to nearby communities that were also affected by the Marshall Fire. When we take a look at the priorities of residents affected by the Marshall Fire, we see that nearly all of those who experienced a direct impact said it was a high or medium priority to focus on utilities, open space and trails, parks, and public safety. Comparatively, those who experienced no impact named economic prosperity, open space and trails, and environmental sustainability as their top choices. Again, a full comparison of responses to each survey item from those affected by the Marshall Fire can be found in the full report. I'd like to open it up for any questions.
Council questions? Yes, Councilmember Fahey.
You said that there was a very low response of people getting their information from the Daily Camera. Is there any way of knowing because they didn't read the Daily Camera or because information from the city wasn't included in it?
We simply asked how much of a source of an information each of those are, so we did not ask a follow-up about whether they used it for other services or other information. The question was purely about obtaining information about the city's services, activities, and such.
Thank you.
Can you remind us what dates the survey was open? I believe you said it opened in May?
April 22nd, and it remained open for 7 weeks.
Okay. And another question I had is, you'd indicated how many people had responded. How does 17% of those randomly selected, that was the 17% was the percentage of people randomly selected who responded? Is that right?
It was 17% of that random
Of
household
that group,
selection.
yeah.
Yes.
How does that compare to other surveys of other communities?
That would actually be a higher percentage than typical. Response rate itself can be a little bit of a misleading statistic because the validity of the survey, the margin of error is all based on the total responses, and it has nothing to do with the overall population of a community, the number of households, or anything like that. So the response rate itself is more of an indication of the efforts we put forth. This was how many responses we got. But to get 570 responses is well above the industry standard of 350.
Okay. And describe a little bit for us when you say that there's the margin of error. Can you explain what that means as we look at some of these numbers going up and down, the percentages?
Absolutely. So think of those 570 responses as you don't need to eat a whole pot of soup to understand how it tastes. So margin of error factors into that with 4 percentage points, meaning that if we were able to receive responses from the entire community, the true response would be within 4 percentage points of the percentages that we have in the report.
Okay, good. Other questions, comments? Yeah.
Yeah, can you, I think you explained this, but could you just give us again, how should we think about high priority versus top priority?
Sure. It's kind of one of those where to really eliminate some of the bias and figure out the natural hierarchy between those items. If you ask everybody what should be a high priority, they're generally going to view many of the things as a high priority. And it's going to be harder to really navigate between what's the difference between a 62% high priority and a 61% high priority. When we then factor in the top three, we saw a little bit of that variance. So the reason why we created that visual was to put all of the items in more of a linear chart, so to speak, and to get that better visual of the items that were in that kind of top right quadrant were the ones that were the high priority and top priority. So those two specific ratings are aligning more for those items than necessarily the items that we saw on the left side, specifically in the bottom left side of that chart.
So how should we think about something that's rated as a, let's say Parks is rated as a relatively high priority, but lower as a top three? I mean, what should be our takeaway from that?
That should be, it's when you're thinking about allocating resources, if you have a limited budget, you have an understanding of where the residents would place that parks in that priority. So if you only have a limited amount of resources, maybe parks doesn't come up as a priority as much as a few residents would have wanted it to. However, if the idea is you look at other items within the survey and you see some of the quality items would say be lower than the priority ratings that we find in this particular question, then you could look at it and analyze, is it more important to close the gap between the priority level and the quality level, or should we stick to what are chosen as the top priorities from the residents in the survey? It's just one more piece of data to help you in decision making, but again, that full report is 194 pages. It is dense. We understand there's a lot of data that's in there to analyze. So we're trying to help kind of give more of a starting point, a little bit of a deeper look into those 194 pages and be able to help you begin that conversation as to what should you do? What is the strategic planning that comes out of this? How does this data factor into that?
Great, thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, Brandon, thank you for such a clear presentation of the highlights tonight. I have two questions. The first one is regarding the two groups who filled out the survey, those who were randomly selected and those who engaged during the open survey. What was the decision behind not combining those two groups in the analysis?
For a purely scientific representative survey, it's about having a control group. So we know the exact probability for every one of the households from that 3,500 household to be selected to take the survey. Whereas the open participation survey, we have no control over who takes that survey. So the reason why we keep them separate is to preserve the scientific sample, because it is entirely possible that if we were to analyze the results from the open participation survey, if we were to commit to that, there's nothing that would stop, say, a local HOA or special interest group from grabbing a link, having all of their members take that survey and skewing the results in a very specific way. Whereas knowing that that scientific sample, there was an exact probability for each one of those households to be selected, it helps preserve that control group, which gives us a better understanding and a better calculation when it comes to not only the margin of error, but weighting the survey to increase the representativeness.
Okay, and the those who filled out the survey through the open access link, their surveys and data are still available for review for council to see, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. My second question is for the 570 who were randomly selected, did the participant have to complete each question in order to move on to the next, or do we have a different number of people? Let's say the museum and the library question pops into my head first, the data that you showed. Was it 10 people who filled that out, or did all 570 have to fill out each one? I'm looking at what our N is and how that could impact
Right.
the percentages you shared.
Don't have the specific ends in front of me, but I do know that from reading through the results that the majority of people did answer those questions specifically. But to your earlier question, not all questions were required in order to complete the survey. So there are areas and there are options within the survey for a don't know answer, which would take away from that end, but those do not get factored into the percent positives that we displayed in the report. But all of those are in that full report in the frequency of results. So you'll be able to check the N of not only who answered for each specific answer, also those who reported don't know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else? Councilmember Fahey.
I just have one more question. So one more.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were
Councilmember
calling on me.
Yeah, I have a question on where the cards were sent. There was a much smaller number sent to Ward 2 than to Wards 1 or 3. I'm wondering, do you have any numbers about what the percentage of responses were? Were there also less than half as many responses from Ward 2?
I do not have that specific part of the report in front of me right now. That would be found under the weighting table within the report.
Okay.
And we do that the reason why less were sent to that particular area is because we mirror the population norms. So of the norms within the population, if say 52% are in Ward 1, 38% are in Ward 3, and 10% are in Ward 2, the amount of households selected would mirror that.
And then was there any consideration about fire survivors who weren't currently living back in Louisville?
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hefner.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, as part of this, have you provided someone in the city with sort of the raw data in some format that we could run different crosstabs or what have you in the future if we wanted to?
I do not know if we have provided the raw data, but that is something that we can make available.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? No? Thank you very much for a good presentation. I appreciate that. Why don't we chat a little bit amongst ourselves about this? I'll take folks in order. Let's do a round of comments. So at least first, and then we'll go back and we can discuss those things that we would like to talk about together. Who wants to start? I probably do. Do we have anybody? I didn't see anybody, and I didn't see anybody in the audience. So, but for the record, there is no public person who's wanting to comment. Who would like to start? Any observations? I'll start. Seeing no other hands. I want to, first of all, call out both Library and Cultural Services and the Rec Center and the Senior Center. Particularly, I mean, we can call out a lot of different people in here, but the marks for these two parts of our government are very, very high. And, this is the first citizen survey we've had since COVID. And those were two institutions that got huge amounts of people using them during that period. And I want to really thank all of the folks who have any responsibility and who've worked during that time, because that's a great mark of confidence, I think, and appreciation So I wanted to certainly call out there. I also think we certainly, some of these numbers have to give us pause. Just, you know, and I'm not going to focus so much on individual ones. We can discuss that a little bit later. But I think we have opportunities to improve. And I'm sure that the staff is going to be looking at ways that they can improve some of the community appreciation and satisfaction over the course. And some of the departments, we know this, have absolutely, and I think of community development, have been stretched beyond imagination during the last few years. And I also want to recognize the challenges that have been faced there, and not to overly put too much negativity into that, because I think that they faced an almost insurmountable challenge with, you know, very little, in some ways, less of a roadmap through all of that. So, and I think that's true of all of city government. I think it's been a hard 4 years for many city governments. And anyway, I'll pass it back. The only other thing I would say is these numbers, the priorities, I think are very consistent with my general understanding of where the city is, very consistent with the results of my own campaigning around the city. Nothing terribly shocking about that, which I think is interesting. And it's also, you know, interesting to see where the breaks are, right? There's usually, you know, 2, 3, sometimes 4 items in the priority list that stand out. I think we need to make good use of that as we think about budget. So I hope we'll be using and drawing on and even referring to these numbers next week. But those are very general comments. Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot to add. I'll share your applause for the city services that performed really well. I'm troubled by the you know, the decreases in scores regarding, frankly, our performance or local government performance. I think that is troubling, and I think we have pretty clear direction here about where priorities lie, and they're consistent, for example, with what we discussed at our work plan meetings last year, that economic vitality continues to be a core concern for many. It's not the thing we have the most control over. Utilities, for example, ranked very highly, and we have much more control over that as compared to economic vitality, but I hope we'll continue to spend time and effort and attention on economic issues. And I thought it was interesting that commercial vacancies in particular were called out, and I hope we can use our work plan process this year to continue to think about creative ways to come after that challenging issue.
Thank you. Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief. I want to ensure that this information is continually threaded through all the work that we do. I'd love to see references to it in staff reports, memos from boards and commissions. You know, we have the comprehensive plan. LRC's got a lot of work. So I would just love to see this data used to support why certain decisions are being made, because it's decisions based on feedback from the residents. That would be really helpful from a policy point of view. Otherwise, great work, and I look forward to using this Thank you.
Thanks. No? Okay, Councilmember Kern.
Thank you. I think that, again, I guess to add on to the compliments to rec and library and the museum, it's nice that those like comfort resources that everybody spends a lot of money contributing to are so highly valued and appreciated. I, like my other fellow council members, would really like to see some of these concerning areas for it to be a really big priority for us. I agree, especially with Councilmember Huffner, that we have to really look at these. And economic vitality, like you said, we've said it for a while, it's a priority, but I think we need to work better together with staff to figure out how to improve it even more. I think these numbers show that people aren't seeing an improvement. They're feeling, like you mentioned, the empty buildings being commented. Living on the west side of town, I think is probably one of the number one things people say. And it's because that's where so many of the buildings are empty. And given that not like a high percentage of people were in Ward 2, but you have a lot of respondents that actually live on the east side of town that are responding with this, it says volumes to me, because I think, to the mayor's point, that's, being out in the community, that's definitely what I hear. We talk about communication internally for the city, and I think this points out to people are using or trying to use our website at a high level, but there's a very large disapproval or dislike. I think it was 60-some% thought it was good. So people are trying to use it, but they're frustrated. We not only hear it all the time, we're now seeing it in a survey. If we can, I think that that's something we need to talk about too, as far as like moving those types of things into a priority, even though they're not listed and named out in the survey as priorities. It's clear just by picking through, you can see that that's important to people. So I would say that for me personally, I just want my council members and the community and staff to know that I take this seriously and personally feel like I have a lot of work to do to not let people down. And I'm looking forward to making sure that the next one of these that gets done is back up in the upper numbers again for a lot of performance from all of us.
Thank you. Yeah, Tim.
So obviously, message loud and clear about economic vitality and prosperity as a real, that's a clear winner. Utilities high, but everyone wants clean drinking water and wastewater, so that's sort of skewed in my opinion. One of the things that I found interesting in the report is that as much as people want economic prosperity and they want to develop the vacant commercial space and underused, the support for mixed-use development, 60% opposed it. So that's an interesting, it was a priority to develop unused or underutilized commercial space, and yes, they're opposed to mixed use. So that's a bit of a telling statement, especially because the other focus or low scores were on, sort of affordable or attainable housing, and obviously that comes with mixed use. So just that thing stood out to me in the report. But I think we have had a clear direction. I agree with Councilmember Hefner on the low scores for the city government. I think we need to improve that score next go around. But yeah, I think this is very useful information.
Other comments? I appreciate the comment about not letting people down. I guess I think about it a little bit differently than that. I would say that some of the numbers that we're seeing and some of the priorities that people are wanting us to pursue is trying to live up to the expectations of the community. It's being our best selves here up on the dais and in the community. It's encouraging our staff who care very deeply about these numbers. And that's one of the measures that they have every 4 years or so to benchmark some of their achievements and maybe places they can grow and challenge themselves. But I think of it, as rising up And I think we're all capable of doing that, and we're all capable of being better. And that's what we're gonna focus on doing. And is using the necessarily limited resources that we have to get to that point is why we've got a 7-person council to try to help set our priorities, and where we've got a great staff to help us execute on those. Anything else that folks, I haven't seen anything from on public. Oh, Sama,
Thank you, Mayor. If I may,
Please.
I'd like to make a few comments.
I'd love for you to do that.
So I want to echo all the things that you said today, and one of them being, yes, we anticipate diving into this and continuing to use this as we come to council with recommendations and have the support of where we think the community is going. I also want to thank Brendan for a really great presentation, and I want to echo something he said at the beginning. This really is a good survey result as you look at national results, which are changing in everywhere, in every municipality. So the fact that we are still at this level is truly a testament to current and past councils, current and past staff, and the work and the commitment to this community through some very tough changes in the last 4 years. I think about communities that have gone through COVID alone and how that's impacted many of these scores. And knowing that our community has gone through so much more in that time, it's really a testament to the work and a credit to what people have done here. So I just want to make sure we put that in perspective, and we will be diving into this data and continuing to use it for you.
Councilmember Fahey.
I'd like to echo what City Manager Fox just mentioned. I think that the way that the city staff in particular came through COVID and then the fire was remarkable. And to still have these high ratings, higher than any other communities, is just a real testament to what a great staff we have. So thank you to all of staff.
I'll say one more thing about something that you just touched on, Councilmember Fahey. I've been here, and others have been here during COVID and the fire. I've been here through the recovery from the flooding too, and the demands on our government here have been pretty significant. Our citizens have expectations that are very high. One of the things that a number of us certainly noticed in COVID was that those expectations did not flag very much during those crises now. And, I think our staff did amazing work during that time period. But I think it's one of those things that we're going to be having to look at as we move into budget discussions, where we're going to put dollars that we've got and how we're going to have to make hard choices. And some of the choices that we always have to make are we going to, reduce the service level in order to be able to increase the service level over here or keep certain service levels at same level. So I think all of us are pretty much favoring really infusing these results into the and making them actionable and relying on them in decisions that we make. And I'm pleased. I hope that the next time we do a survey that council will have input into the formation of some of the questions. There are some questions that I think in the past council has put in here in the very little real estate that's left after trying to do some of the other areas that we need to benchmark each time. But I think it's important for figuring out some of the priorities of comparing items. It's easy to say, gee, we want more of this, and this, and more of this, and more of this. A little harder, but to say, well, when it's these certain priorities and there are limited resources, I would rather have more of this than that. And that's something that can be very helpful to us too. Some of the, the data will help us with that, but I hope that'll happen the next time. Anything else for the good of the order? No. Okay. Thanks again to everybody who had anything to do with that, and staff and the consultant that we've used, Polko. And thank you, Brandon, for coming and sharing this. All right. Our last item on the agenda is discussion, direction, action concerning interim city manager. And on this one, I'm not sure whether we have a staff presentation or not.
Mayor, there's no formal staff presentation. This item is on your agenda for council discussion and direction.
Understood. The way I see this, and I'm glad to entertain other thoughts, really is kind of two questions. The first being, how do we select someone to serve in a role for the next 6 to 9 months while we search for a full-time city manager? How we do that. There are different ways. There are certainly search firms, and there are, finding people who folks know who can do that sort of thing. There are, there are ways of seeking out, talented people. And so that's really the first question. I suspect there'll be some thoughts about that. And the second question is, assuming we can arrive at a consensus about how we do that, it'll be sort of next steps. What do we do? And certainly one of the possibilities is making our current acting city manager or interim, but there's nothing of a foregone conclusion about that. And we need to talk through both of those questions. And I guess unless somebody has another way of doing it, I guess I'd like to talk first about how we select somebody to help us during this in-between time. Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate how you set that up. I guess to my view, time is a little bit of the essence in terms of finding a permanent city manager, and as such, I would, it probably wouldn't be a great use of our time to engage a search firm to find an interim, and then sometime after that engage that search firm or another search firm to find a it feels like probably too much process when, at least to my view, we have a good in-house deputy who could be our interim, and we could cut right to the chase and work on our search for a permanent city manager, which is going to be critically important. And probably my understanding is could take 3 to 6 months to complete, and I'd love to see us get started on that as soon as possible. And just thinking about all the other important items on our agenda, no need to create work unnecessarily. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Others? Yes, Councilmember Fahey.
I'll echo what Councilmember Dietrich just said. I think we have an acting city manager who has been an acting city manager in the past also. She's familiar with the process, she's familiar with the city, and doing this expeditiously will speed up the process of getting a new city manager hired and trained. So I would prefer to just appoint someone now.
Others? Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I too believe that we have a very strong candidate in-house already. Our staff needs stability. They need guidance right now to usher us through the very large projects that we have in the works. So I see no need to go and have an outside search. I think we need to focus, as Councilmember Hefner mentioned, on finding a city manager and keeping things moving forward in the interim. And I think what we have in-house as far as talent goes right now is what we need and what our staff need to keep moving forward.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Kern.
I think for efficiency purposes, because I would really like the search for a new city manager to get started as quickly as possible, but be highly effective for the city. Try and find somebody who can be here with us for a while, and for the continuity of government. I would agree, and I think staff, by all accounts, seems to be, in favor. Keep it smooth and move it forward, so that we can get to just moving things along. Hopefully by the end of this year, at the very early part of next. So I would agree.
Thanks. Councilmember Bierman.
Agree with everything that's been said on the dais. We, have so much in front of us that to delay this interim appointment just doesn't make sense in my opinion. So I agree with all the comments that my fellow council members have made.
Well, on the first question, I think we have decidedly one-sided that we really don't need to find more process to go through to find an interim. The one that I forgot to mention was the sort of rent-to-own. That's sometimes folks work this where they have somebody and they kind of bring them on with the idea that maybe they'll be there for the long term. That's not really a model which I think works here either. I agree with Councilmember Hamilton about the need for stability and for as much return to normalcy as we can. It's always a big thing when a chief executive departs. It's always a big thing. Culturally, it's organizationally, there's the whole bit. And I think the staff has done marvelously in rallying around our acting city manager, and I too have a lot of confidence. And I think we need to get to putting together an RFP. We need to get and finalizing that and getting it out. One of the things that I think is really important and may be lost, it certainly was lost on me. I'm not going to say it's lost on anybody else, but the ICMA is a really important group of city managers, an association of International City Managers Association, and comprised primarily of city managers. And that is a terrific pool to draw from, and they just so happen to have their conference. I think it's in September, right? And there is a big difference between an acting city manager and an interim city manager. Interim city manager or an acting city manager does an important role. It's what acting city manager Sama Fox has been doing. The acting role is also one that if the city manager is not available that weekend, we give to other people depending on who's available, right? There's an order of that. So it's a temporary kind of position, and an interim is a little different. It's seen as actually acting in that function, as one of my council members reminded me. This decisions to put somebody in that job of city manager, whether it's interim or full-time, and I don't want to say permanent because it's never permanent, but for the city manager position, is a full council issue. It's a decision that we make as a body. It's one of the only appointments that we make, and it probably is the most important. And this is, it's a little different when we come to interim, but when we're talking about having somebody, and Sama would be going down in that position if we put her in as an interim, she could provide some information to the people down there and wave around the RFP and attract some interest. And I think that is a very useful way of helping with the recruiting process. It certainly doesn't supplant the process that we probably will follow, and we'll talk about that, I think, at another stage. It's not on the agenda right now. Here's what I was going to suggest. I think there are a couple of ways we can proceed right now, and I'd like to understand where council is. One, I think, would be to make a decision tonight, now that we've made, at least we have a consensus around the fact that we don't really need to go outside to find somebody. We could make the decision to appoint Sama Fox as our interim. And the question then becomes kind of how that gets sort of negotiated. And it may be that there is an agreement that has been used in the past. There are particular, because your interim city manager is stepping into the shoes of a city manager, there is a contract that comes with that position. It's a temporary contract, but nonetheless important. And I think it may be worthwhile to appoint a couple of us on council to work with the city attorney and, if you will, negotiate with acting city manager Fox about the details of that, and come back and potentially put it on the consent agenda in a future meeting. That's really what I would propose. I don't know that we have to, I suppose we can make the decision and approve the contract at the same time, but I don't know that there's necessarily any reason to wait. I guess I'd like perhaps a thought from the city manager as to whether it would be better to wait and do it all at once.
I think you're looking to the city attorney.
City attorney, sorry.
Sorry,
Santa,
you
do you
said
have a
city
view
manager.
about that?
I was looking at the coming attractions to see the tentative council agenda.
Yeah.
You certainly could appoint tonight, subject to successful negotiation and approval of an agreement. It's really up to you how you would like to proceed. You know, I would say that if you decide to appoint tonight, then we would probably want to style the agreement to be, you know, effective, and that may make some terms of it retroactive to tonight, but that's certainly something that you can do.
Right. Why don't we when I open it up to council members for some thoughts. All right, we got the ends kind of going back and forth. Councilmember Hefner, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think there's a lot of merit to doing what our city attorney just described, just in terms of making an announcement that we've selected an interim. We know who it is. There's someone in charge. I think there's some value in doing that, even though it won't be final until we get the contract done. And, I trust that can be done in relatively short order.
Yes, and that's why I was looking at your advanced agenda. I mean, you do have a special meeting on the 23rd that Meredith will be able to include.
Yeah, both the 23rd and the 30th are special meetings, so you could include a contract on either of those, or the 6th is our next regular meeting.
I'm not sure if I heard you volunteer or not, but I would nominate you, Mr. Mayor, to serve on the committee to figure out the contract, given your professional experience.
Which, of course, I would not be using. Can't use. We have a city attorney who's negotiated or helped to negotiate a lot. That's fine, although I am glad to entertain others to assist. Councilmember, would you like to do that?
I'd be happy to assist, especially with my background in management and human resources. It could be beneficial.
Yeah. And I would like to think we can do this pretty quickly. I don't know, and I don't know whether we need to set a date tonight to have that ready. Kind of depends on how fast we could conclude it. I would hope we would be able to conclude it, within days or the week. But I also know that the packet goes out earlier than it used to, thanks to staff and to the city clerk. So today's Tuesday. It often goes out on Thursday. That can be the acting city manager works during that period. But if we can find a time next couple of days, we ought to be able to get this done. But I don't want to push if you need extra time or the city attorney is not available.
I was just going to say, let's see how the city attorney, what her availability is.
I'll be available.
Okay. And maybe we can
Do it by
post it by Friday instead of by Thursday. That might give us a little more time. Got a pretty busy couple of days ahead of us, so.
Yeah, I think that maybe we can talk about that.
Okay.
But does anybody else have any comment? I mean, I think the way Kathleen described it was
Yeah, I
really
think,
good.
I mean, I agree with like the announcement, and then we can work out the nitty-gritty in details, but I think some of those things need to be ironed out, for sure.
I think that we probably, to appoint an interim city manager, need to do a roll call vote. What I was going to do is, let me try to make a
Couple of things.
Yeah,
Do you
please.
want to at least ask for public comment? I don't have any
Yeah,
cards, but
that's probably a good idea. Any public comments? Anyone who would like to? We don't have anybody in our chambers. We have several online.
I think we're good.
Okay.
And then we just need a motion.
Yeah. I would move that we appoint acting city manager Sama Fox to be the interim city manager for the city of Louisville, subject to successful negotiation of the terms of a temporary interim employment contract.
Second.
Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Lay?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Bierman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kern?
Yes.
Councilmember Fahey?
Yes.
Councilmember Hefner?
Yes.
Well, I think we've made a motion, and she'll eventually have to decide whether to accept the contract. But I I think the motion is the motion. And would it be wise for us to ask the acting city manager, the interim city manager, whether she actually will accept that position?
Right, from a legal standpoint, it's not required, I think.
Very good.
that If
I didn't think so, but
interim city manager Fox would like to say something,
yes,
she certainly could.
please.
Council members, I want to thank you for your confidence in me tonight and for this opportunity. I do look forward to continue working with the city of Louisville here.
We have high confidence that you will do all of what you need to do in this position. And thank you for being willing to take on the responsibility. Anything else from anybody? Okay. All right. City Attorney's report.
I have no report this evening, thank you.
Hey, council comments, committee reports, and identification of future agenda items. Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?